I want to thank Mr. Mannion, John Mannion, who is a candidate for the Group 3 judicial seat in the 18th Judicial Circuit. He is challenging a sitting judge, and but she was not able to be with us today, so we will proceed with questions for him. And I thank everybody for joining us. I can start with the first question, I guess. Why do you think that that you would be a good candidate for the judiciary?
I think I would be a good candidate for the judiciary because I have what folks call real world experience. I entered the law late. I did work at the Coca-Cola company. I was a project manager. I worked on the year 2000 project while putting myself through law school. There was no state law school in Miami where I grew up. And so it wasn't until I got to the Coca-Cola company that I was able to afford to go to law school. I've been in my professional career a prosecutor and now a board certified criminal defense attorney. I've won awards both as a prosecutor. I won the 2011 Pride and Excellence Award from the state attorney, and I won the Gray Wiggum Award most recently from the Seminole County Bar Association. So on both sides of the courtroom, my colleagues have recognized, I believe, a sense of fairness and honesty and integrity that they have recognized and awarded me for. I would bring this to the bench if elected.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to sort of segue into one of the questions we always ask someone who's challenging an incumbent is, that you have to basically give voters a reason to oust the incumbent. I have been privy to your press releases. You have not been shy about giving some of the specific reasons why you believe Judge Rexedler has some problems or some issues. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Well, I was not even thinking of running for judge at the beginning of the year, and it was other attorneys who approached me and asked me to consider that. And at first I had to think about it with my wife. It is a tough road to hoe to go up against an incumbent judge, but as I have brought forward, and I'm trying to just bring forward the facts and the truth, she has been reprimanded by the Florida Supreme Court for lack of candor. And I think that this to me is conduct on becoming a judge. There are other things that have gone on in the courtroom and things that I hope you guys are aware of, but I really don't want to make the race a negative race so much about her as the positives about me and what I can bring to the bench. I think that, these are things that the voters are entitled to know about. I think that, I've heard folks, they call county court the people's court. Well, to me, they're all the people's court. We all take an oath to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States and the state of Florida. And that was enacted by the people. So the people are the ones who have to make a decision whether this is conduct on becoming a judge. I think it is, but I would rather also focus on my own record, and I've been trying to focus on that as well.
One of the things that we really enjoy asking about is the growing role of so-called problem-solving courts or specialty courts. And the circuit has several of them, but are there any that you think could be added?
Yes. I remember when Judge Woodard was instrumental in starting Veterans Court, and that really has been a boon to folks who fall through the cracks. There are other folks who fall through the cracks quite a bit. I've seen it with mental health patients where they're not so bad that they are incompetent, but they're having a difficult time in the judicial system. I can add to that, one of the groups that I've seen are the homeless. I've got a current client right now that when I have met with her in jail, it's a dependency case, and I've met with her in jail, and I feel like I'm making progress with her and explaining how the procedure is going to work and what she needs to do in order to be reunited with her children. And once she gets released, I haven't heard from her, and it breaks my heart that this happens. I've also had a number of cases in which I've defended what I would call the victims of human trafficking, girls who passed around for the payment of drug debts, and they themselves commit crime. So it's a very difficult thing to deal with, this human trafficking, because they're not wholly innocent, but they are victims of crimes themselves. And the court system right now, I think, tries to deal with them in an appropriate fashion, but I think that a court specifically designed to help these sort of victims of human trafficking who are also themselves accused of crimes would really be a benefit to society.
Mr. Mannion, I guess another question we are interested in as a media organization is we're a big believer in the public having access to records with the court system, and I know lawyers need that as well. I'm wondering what your take is on the availability of records in the circuit, and also if you have any for whether things should be improved in any way.
I remember when Government and Sunshine was passed in the 70s, and obviously the doom and gloom never came to pass. And I've used public records requests to defend folks all the time when you can't get what you need through discovery. And a lot of information that has been what I would say necessary for folks, it really does come through public records. And so I'm a big supporter of that. I also would point out, I was prosecuting a murder case while there was another big case going on. And one of your reporters asked me for some information on it, and I pointed her to where it was in the court record. As a prosecutor, I wasn't going to answer the question, but it was on the issue of stand your ground. Renee Stutzman asked me some questions, and I brought her right there. And so the public got, through your paper, I think, an honest answer. And nobody else approached me about that question from the national media during this time frame, except for her. So I throw kudos to her and your organization for that. But that's another instance in which public records and the use of it, the appropriate use of it, has really benefited the public.
Okay. I also noted in one of your, maybe it was on your campaign website, you said that one of your goals was to restore integrity. I obviously, by extrapolation, that means you believe some integrity is lacking, but maybe you could elaborate a little bit on what you mean by that.
Obviously, my opponent's reprimand from the state Supreme Court, I think, weighs heavily, and I think that is a problem, and that, as I said, needs to be addressed, and it needs to be addressed to the voters. From my perspective, I heard it once said that being a judge is kind of like being an umpire in a baseball game. You're there to call balls and strikes. You're not there to be the player. You're not the one hitting the home run. You know, a great judicial career, nobody should know your name. You just gave everybody a fair day in court and went on. And that's what I hope to bring to the bench, that sort of thing of, I'm here to serve. I serve the people. That is what my passion is. That's why I became a prosecutor, was to pursue justice. That's why I became a defense attorney, was to pursue justice. So that's what I'm looking to do.
Thank you very much.
Actually, that does lead to a question. When a judge is in a high profile case, and you have some experience with high profile cases, they are frequently made the object of scrutiny. People will look at things that they've done before. They will look at societies and groups that they're members of, sometimes even where they go to church. How do you withstand that kind of scrutiny, or how does a judge withstand that kind of scrutiny and still maintain an impartial, unbiased approach in the courtroom?
In 1970, my father was sent to Mississippi to enforce desegregation. The IRS had made a ruling that private schools that discriminated against certain people were not charitable organizations, and he and another agent, Joe Rodriguez, went out to Jackson, Mississippi. And my dad brought me and my mother. My sisters were in college at the time, so it was just the two of us. And I know at least my grandmother thought it was a dangerous thing to do. My dad's not going to appear in any history books. He's not going to appear in any memorial or anything like that, but he stood up to do the right thing. It may have cost him personally. It may not have. Fortunately, it didn't, but my dad is the most honest and decent man I've ever known in my life. And that's what I want to be. I will stand up for justice. And if it costs me, it costs me.
Do you have any thoughts on the resources that the district has, whether there are enough judges, and if not, what you think should be done to that end?
I've actually worked in government, did budget finance for Dade County Schools. So the answer is always there's never enough resources to go around. And I know that that's always a painful question. There's a lot of times in which the courts are backlogged, and you don't want to rush justice in anything, because a lot of these cases are complex, and sometimes they're more complex than folks might think on first blush. And the attorneys really need the time to thoroughly research your cases. And as a prosecutor, there was a number of times in which I had defense attorneys come to me and they said, look, my guy's innocent. There was a grand theft auto that I think about quite a bit and talked to that attorney about. And when I did the research and looked at it, well, it turned out that the attorney was right, and I ended up dismissing the charges. And that's one of these cases that sits with me, because again, able to do justice. The judges need to be able to do that too. And so I would always advocate more resources for the judiciary, but I also understand that the legislature is under an enormous amount of pressure from both citizens not wanting higher taxes and all the other agencies that also need things. So you try to do the best you can with what you got.
Okay, thank you.
One of the big changes that we've seen in the last couple of years in the court system and everywhere is use of technology, such as we're using right now, to facilitate meetings, court hearings, even trials. Assuming that someday we get out of this COVID haze, what use would you support of remote technology in the courtroom going forward?
I'd have to say that the irony is that this COVID has sort of been a blessing in this respect, in that folks who are dead set in their ways, and this is how we've always done that. We always have a docket sounding once a month, and everybody's got to show up. And in Lake County, where I also do court appointed work, the judges there are doing Zoom docket sounding, and it goes by very quick. I know I've been in dependency court here in Seminole County, and we'll have instances in which a lawyer is having difficulty talking with a client or something, because they're Spanish speaking, they speak well enough, but they really need an interpreter, and boom, fire up a language line and have an interpreter there in the courtroom within a matter of minutes. And in fact, you talk about resources. I wish the Justice Administrative Commission would buy a package on that, so that when I do get appointed a Spanish speaking client, that I have access to that and not have to work around the resources that I do have, because that is a great tool. So I've seen that, and I would definitely advocate that. For trial, sometimes I think you got to look a witness in the eye, but if that's what they want, and I've seen witnesses where the parties have agreed, and it has worked fine, and I would certainly not stand in the way of that.
We are running out of time here. I think we've covered a lot of ground. I'm going to let you have a closing statement. Before you do, though, I got to ask you, do you actually read any of the books behind you anymore?
We have a seasoned attorney in the office who reads them. I joke that he read law with Moses. He read one tablet and Moses read the other, and then they passed them to each other, and that's how they graduated law school. But I've only worked off the computer since I've been an attorney, and I don't think I'd want to do it any other way.
My father was an attorney older than you, and those books were collecting dust at the end of his career. So that's part of why I asked. Well, before we end up, I think Chris usually likes to invite the candidates to basically give their elevator pitch for why you think voters should put you on the bench.
That I do.
Well, I believe that I have a wealth of experience that encompasses not just trial experience in the courtroom, but real world experience that I bring from the business world. That taught me an awful lot. And I'm not going to say that the corporate world is perfect, because it's not, but there's a viewpoint that you come away with from that. I've also been on both sides of the courtroom as a prosecutor, and now as a defense attorney, and doing dependency work and some civil work. As I said, the integrity issue. I'm not about me. If nobody remembers my name at the end of my career, I'm fine with that, as long as people walk away saying, that judge, I don't remember his name, but I was heard and I had justice. And then it really have compassion for that. I've sat with victims of crimes who their lives have been destroyed from it, and it's horrible. But I've also sat with young men wrongfully accused of crimes in jail cells, and that is just as horrible. And there's two sides to every story, and that is what I'll bring to the bench, is this understanding that you got to listen to both sides. You absolutely got to listen to both sides, and at the end of the day, make a decision.
Thank you very much.
I thank you very much. I just wanted to remind everybody that this race is a nonpartisan race, so everybody in Seminole and Brevard can vote in this race, and it will be on the August 23rd ballot. I thank you so much for spending time with us.